Hey everybody, I'm Sujay Kansagra, here to talk to you a little bit about sleep and the importance of sleep for the student. I'm actually a pediatric neurologist by training. I just finished that training and I'm doing a year of sleep medicine fellowship. And so I've learned a great deal about sleep this year. And it's really one of those things that if I wish I could change something about when I was a student, back when I was a pre-med in college, or when I was a medical student, sleep is one of those things I wish I could change. And unfortunately, since I can't go back and change it, the next best thing I can do is tell you about it, so hopefully you can change some of your habits if sleep is an issue for you. I'll start out by saying that if you have an actual sleep problem, YouTube is not a substitute for a doctor, so please see your doctor. I know you know that already, but I have to say it. All right, so sleep. What exactly is sleep? Well, it's a state of decreased level of consciousness where we still have quite an active amount of things going on in our brains, and it's associated with an arrest of activity, and it's a reversible state. Nobody really knows why we sleep, but it's something that has been very well conserved all throughout evolution. And if it wasn't important, there was no real evolutionary reason why we should be asleep. After all, it's a huge disadvantage to your survival if you are laying out in the middle of a field asleep, and yet we sleep. And so what exactly is the reason behind it? Not quite sure, but we do know that it plays a variety of roles. One of the theories is that it's a restorative process, and so we wear and tear on our bodies all throughout the day, and sleep is a time that we can stop undergoing the catabolic process and start undergoing the anabolic process, where we start restoring our bodies. That's one theory. Some theories say that it's important for consolidating memories, and there is some data behind that, where REM sleep is important for memory consolidation. Some say that sleep is a time where we actually get rid of memories that we don't need, and so you're not really going to remember all the things that you saw the day before because you sleep and get rid of those types of memories. So these are a variety of different theories, but the point is we all need sleep. Now, what is the average need for an adult when it comes to the total amount of sleep time in the day? And it's actually between 7 and 9 hours. And you might chuckle at that because in our modern society, people rarely get the amount of sleep they need, which shouldn't be a surprise to you. But 7 to 9 hours is the goal. And where you fall on that is essentially genetically determined. And unfortunately, as hard as you may try, there's nothing that can really change your biological need for sleep. And the average adult, actually, when I do studies, the time that you really need to sleep comes out to about 8.5 hours. But again, there's a broad curve. And between 7 and 9 is kind of average, but you do actually have people at the tail end. Some people do great and function very well off of just 6 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep. Those types of people are pretty rare. And there are some that we consider long sleepers, and they actually need 10 or more hours of sleep to feel fully refreshed. But again, most people fall between 7 and 9 hours. So what's the amount of sleep you need? Well, it's very hard to determine, and the tough thing is that if you are chronically sleep deprived, there's also an additional amount of sleep debt that you have to pay off, and that's because you haven't gotten adequate amounts of sleep on nights prior. That sleep need can build up, requiring you to actually sleep more than what your physiologic need for sleep is. So what is a normal amount of sleepiness? If you're like me, every time I cracked open a book in college and in medical school, or every time I went to a class, I was dozing off. And we really judge pathologic sleepiness by your tendency to be able to fall asleep during a daytime nap. We have a test called a multiple sleep latency test where we have people go to the sleep lab, and for 4 or 5 naps, we measure how long it takes those people to fall asleep. If you can fall asleep in under 5 minutes, that's considered pathologic sleepiness. And when I think about my medical training, I think I was pathologically sleepy throughout all of training, and a lot of people out there probably feel the same way. If you can fall asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow, that's pathologic level of sleepiness, and a lot of us have that. And so how do we get over that? What's the magic pill we can take to get over this sleepiness? And unfortunately, there isn't one. As you've probably figured out, if there was something that you can take to make you sleep less and actually still make you feel completely refreshed and restored, a drug company would be making millions of dollars off of it. So there's no magic pill. Now, what happens as we are awake, there's 2 real processes. One is your circadian rhythm, which is a natural 24-hour or slightly longer than 24-hour period that our body fluctuates its level of alertness and how awake we are. And there is a natural dip around 1 or 2 o'clock after lunchtime, and it's actually our circadian rhythm. It's not the fact that we've just eaten a big meal for lunch. It's our circadian rhythm. You might realize that after you eat a big breakfast or a big dinner, you don't really get sleepy. It's really just after lunchtime, and that's because of your circadian dip. And then our circadian rhythm again dips in late evening hours. That's one process that's going on to help you go to sleep. The other process is a homeostatic drive, and what that is essentially the longer you're awake, the more propensity you have to actually want to go to sleep. And we think what mediates that are a variety of chemicals that build up in your brain. One breakdown product of energy use is actually adenosine, and we think that adenosine is a trigger that tells your brain how sleepy you should be. And you have receptors in your brain that bind to adenosine, and the more adenosine you have, the more likely you are to want to go to sleep. There are two substances that you consume regularly that actually block adenosine receptors: caffeine and theophylline from tea. And so that's the reason why you feel more awake when you drink caffeine and tea. It's blocking the adenosine receptor so you don't feel that level of sleepiness. But that adenosine keeps building up, and as soon as that caffeine is out of your system, it binds those receptors, and there you are, sleepy. So there's no real fooling your body, unfortunately. Now, the difficulty with chronic sleep deprivation is a lot of people say, oh, I've gotten used to only sleeping 6 hours, I'm doing fine. Well, the truth is, when you're chronically sleep deprived, your brain loses the ability to perceive how sleep deprived you are. And so people that think they've gotten used to it, actually their brain no longer perceives that they are sleep deprived. But we know that if we do specific cognitive testing on things like vigilance and attention, your ability continues to drop the longer you're sleep deprived. And so although you might not realize you're sleep deprived, your cognitive abilities are getting worse and worse. All right, so you're sleepy. What do you do about it? And what I encourage people to do is actually find a week in their schedule that works well, a week that you don't have any big tests coming up or have a huge amount of work, and actually take the time and commit yourself to getting a large amount of sleep every single night. I'm talking 9, 10, 11 hours if you need it. If you can actually sleep 11 hours without being disrupted, that's because you're chronically sleep deprived, most likely. And so try that for a week or even 2 weeks. See how you feel. And if you start feeling a whole lot better, you start getting a lot more efficient in your work, you have a lot more energy, it's because you've been chronically sleep deprived. And now you know how it feels when you actually get the normal amount of sleep. And you might find that you're a much more efficient student. You can get your work done, and you're running circles around your colleagues because you feel so good. So try it. It's just 1 week of your life. Experiment. Life's too short to go through it sleepy all the time. And so give yourself a chance to do this experiment and see how you feel. If it doesn't work, hey, it's only 1 or 2 weeks out of your life, right? I tell myself if I had slept an hour more throughout all of school, I would have probably been 50% more efficient. And so although people are like, oh, I don't want to sleep, it's a waste of time, I don't get studying done. Well, if you're 50% more efficient during the time you're awake, you'll get all your work done anyway, and you'll feel better the next day. So something to think about. The other question I sometimes get a lot is, I can't sleep at night. I feel really tired during the day, and then when it's time to go to bed at night, I just can't sleep. And one of the things you have to realize is that the caffeine you ingest, even in the morning, can still affect your sleep at night. So you might think that, oh, the caffeine is in and out, but physiologically it's still affecting our bodies. And so those that do have insomnia tendencies or might be light sleepers, you can very much be affected by your morning coffee. And this is a great kind of cycle for coffee companies, obviously, because you feel tired during the day, you drink coffee, you don't sleep as deeply and as well at nighttime, you have trouble sleeping, you feel tired the next day, and what do? You drink more coffee. So it works well for coffee companies, it doesn't work well for us. And so the first thing to do is try to get rid of that caffeine. There's lots and lots of other things you could potentially try, but if you're having lots of problems going to sleep, obviously, you want to talk to your regular doctor. So those are the main points. You really have to know your sleep need, try to catch up on your sleep need, try to maintain a consistent schedule, and I think you'll be a healthier, more efficient person for it. I think you'll feel better, and I think you'll run circles around your colleagues as long as you have healthy sleep habits. If you want to read about my experience with sleep, actually I talk about it in the very first chapter of my book. I put a link below to a free preview. I don't think you can see it from a smartphone. I think you actually have to use a desktop to look at the preview. But I talk about how I actually fell asleep standing up during my surgery rotation during a surgery in medical school, which was not cool. So I hope you found this advice useful, and hope you have a good night's sleep tonight.